On our anniversary, my husband threw my handmade gift in the trash and told me he wanted something real. A few weeks later, he saw that same gift sitting in a Fifth Avenue gallery window with a price tag of $170,000. This is the story of how that happened. Dad's friend from work bought it for me because she felt bad about my clothes. My 16-year-old daughter, Michelle, stood in her bedroom doorway, draped in a designer jacket that cost more than our monthly grocery bill for our place in Queens. She delivered this bombshell like she was telling me the weather forecast was partly cloudy. I carefully set down the ceramic vase I was holding. It represented 3 months of secret, painstaking work at the local arts co-op. It was covered in hand-painted chrysanthemums, my anniversary gift for my husband, Sean, for the next day. As I placed it on the counter, I felt something crack deep inside me, and it had nothing to do with the clay. Queen, she said, a woman's name I'd never heard before, a woman buying my daughter clothes that cost a fortune. And Michelle, my own daughter, said it so casually, like I was supposed to know exactly who she was. My fingers, still stained with the cobalt blue from the glazing, trembled as I reached out and touched the jacket's price tag, still tucked inside the collar. $800. $800 for a jacket? I whispered. From Dad's friend, Michelle repeated, turning to admire herself in the cheap hallway mirror we'd had since we got married. She owns a gallery on Fifth Avenue. She said she remembers what it's like being young and just wanting to fit in. The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, like this was a perfectly normal thing, made my chest tighten into a painful knot. I watched my daughter, my Michelle, stroking the supple Italian leather. I watched her face light up in a way it never did when I'd come home with a bolt of fabric from Joann's, excited to sew her something special. Just last month, I'd stayed up for 2 weeks straight, hand-embroidering tiny flowers along the hem of a dress for her school dance. She'd worn it once, for about an hour, before burying it in the back of her closet behind the trendy, expensive clothes Sean bought for her. How long has Dad been friends with this queen? I asked. I fought to keep my voice steady even as my mind started sprinting through a marathon of red flags. Every late night, Sean claimed to be at the office. Every weekend meeting that popped up out of nowhere. Every single time he'd come home smelling of a perfume that wasn't mine. I don't know, a while. Michelle shrugged, already bored with the conversation, her attention glued to her reflection. She's cool, though. She knows all about art and stuff. You know, real art. Real art. The 2 words hit me like a slap in the face. I looked down at the vase in my hands, at the chrysanthemums I'd painted with such obsessive care that my eyes would blur after hours of detail work. Each petal had at least 12 different gradients of color, a glazing technique I had developed myself after 6 straight months of failures. My pottery teacher at the co-op, an old-timer named George, had called it revolutionary. But to my daughter, it wasn't real art. I carried the vase into our tiny, cramped kitchen and set it on the counter, right where the morning light from our one good window would hit it. The light caught the glaze, and for a second the flowers looked like they were breathing. Tomorrow was our 12th anniversary. I'd started this piece 3 months ago, sneaking away to the studio whenever Sean was working late, which was happening more and more. The apartment felt suffocating as I went through the motions of our morning routine. Sean emerged from the bedroom at exactly 7:15 a.m., as predictable as the MTA schedule. Dark suit, blue tie, the same damn cologne he'd worn since he was at NYU Law. He was already scrolling through his phone, his face illuminated by the cold blue light of the screen, as I made his coffee. 2 sugars, a splash of cream, in the same mug his mother gave us at our wedding. "Don't wait up tonight," he mumbled, not even bothering to look up. "Big case, the Henderson merger." I'd been hearing about the Henderson merger for 3 months. It apparently required a lot of late nights, a lot of weekend meetings, a lot of him sliding into bed after midnight, careful not to let his skin touch mine, reeking of expensive wine and someone else's perfume. "Tomorrow's our anniversary," I said, my voice quiet, searching his face for any flicker of recognition. His fingers paused their swiping for a millisecond. "Right. We should do something." He said it with all the enthusiasm of someone scheduling a dentist appointment. 12 years of marriage, reduced to an obligation. A checkbox on his Google Calendar, probably added by his secretary. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him about the vase, about the months of my life I'd poured into it, about how I'd invented a new glazing technique just to capture the way morning light looked on a flower. Instead, I just nodded and handed him his coffee. At the arts co-op that afternoon, I tried to teach my class of senior citizens, but my mind was a million miles away. My student, George, a 73-year-old Vietnam vet whose hands shook from Parkinson's unless he was holding a piece of clay, saw it immediately. "What's eating you, Jane?" he asked, his eyes still sharp as a hawk's. "You keep staring out that window like you're waiting for the cavalry." I pulled out my phone and showed him a picture of the vase. I just needed someone to see it, to confirm it was real, that it mattered. He studied the photo for a long, silent moment. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice raspy. "Truly. The color work is extraordinary. What's the occasion?" "Anniversary gift for my husband." George's hands, which had been deftly shaping a pot on the wheel, went still. "My wife, God rest her soul, threw away every single thing I ever made for her. Said it was junking up the house. 20 years of paintings, sculptures, woodwork, all of it, straight into the garbage." He looked up at me, and his eyes held a stark warning. 6 months after she passed, the freaking Metropolitan Museum of Art called. They'd seen one of my sculptures at an estate sale, wanted to acquire my entire collection. They paid her new husband $2 million for the junk she'd thrown away. The room suddenly felt ice cold. "I'm so sorry, George," I stammered. "Don't be sorry. Be smart," he grunted, turning back to his clay. "That vase of yours. That's professional. That's museum quality. But if your husband is anything like my wife was, he won't see it. Men like that, they only see value when some other guy with a checkbook tells them it's there." That evening, I sat alone at our little dining table, applying the final layer of sealant to the vase. The apartment was silent except for the muffled sound of our neighbor's TV bleeding through the paper-thin walls. Michelle was holed up in her room, probably FaceTiming her friends, trying on that damn jacket again, and Sean was at his meeting, or with Queen, or wherever it was he went when he was supposed to be with me. I thought about George's words, about value and recognition, about the vast canyon between what something is truly worth and what someone thinks it's worth. The vase was perfect. Every line, every curve, every petal was exactly as I'd envisioned it. Tomorrow, I would give it to Sean, and maybe, just maybe, he would finally see. Maybe he would understand that this wasn't just clay and glaze. It was proof that I was more than just the woman who made his coffee and raised his daughter while he built his empire in Midtown. But even as I tried to believe it, a cold dread settled in my stomach. The evidence was all there, in Michelle's $800 jacket, in Sean's endless late nights, in the vacant way he looked right through me. Tomorrow, I would give him this piece of my soul, and he would set it aside, just like he set aside everything else I was. The morning of our anniversary arrived with a deceptive calm. I woke up early, my hands surprisingly steady, and began preparing a special dinner. The vase sat on the counter, a silent testament to my hope, its chrysanthemums catching the pale morning light in a way that still took my breath away. 12 years. It deserved something special. It deserved a final, desperate attempt to believe in us, despite the distance, despite the late nights, despite Queen's name hanging in the air like a ghost. By 5:00 p.m., I'd transformed our cramped dining area. Dollar Tree candles flickered, looking almost elegant. The good plates, inherited from my mother, were set. The chicken marsala I'd slaved over filled the apartment with the rich scent of wine and mushrooms. A fresh blister was already forming on my wrist from our moody oven that ran 50 degrees too hot. I didn't care. I wrapped the vase in tissue paper I'd spent an hour hand-painting with tiny gold hearts, each one a pathetic little prayer. 6:00 p.m. came and went. Then 6:30. I sent Sean one text. "Dinner's ready. Happy anniversary." The message delivered, but no reply came. The marsala started to congeal. The candles dripped wax onto the tablecloth. At 6:40, I heard his key in the lock. Sean walked in, looking disheveled. His usually perfect suit was wrinkled, his tie was askew, and he was radiating a floral, expensive perfume that was definitely not mine. It clung to him like an accusation. "Traffic was a nightmare," he said, his eyes avoiding mine, scanning the candlelit table like he'd walked into a trap. "You didn't have to do all this." The casual dismissal was a gut punch, but I pushed on. "It's our anniversary, Sean. 12 years. He sat down, his body stiff with reluctance, and immediately pulled out his phone. He checked it twice before I could even serve the food. I watched him eat, a robot shoveling food into his mouth, his mind a million miles away, probably with her, with Queen. When I placed the carefully wrapped gift in front of him, he stared at it as if it were a bomb. "Open it," I whispered. He tore at the paper with zero enthusiasm, ripping through the little gold hearts I'd painted. When the vase was finally revealed, the candlelight hit the chrysanthemums, making them glow as if they were alive. I held my breath. His face shifted from mild curiosity to something far worse than anger, disappointment. It was the look you give a toddler who proudly hands you a necklace made of macaroni. "Jane," he began, setting the vase down carefully, as if it might contaminate him. "We talked about this, about gifts. You said you wanted something real," I started, but he was already shaking his head. "This isn't what I meant." He pulled out his phone again, swiping to a photo. "Look, this is what Queen gave me." He showed me the screen, a Rolex Submariner. $18,000, he said, the number hanging in the air. "Now that's a real gift." The room started to tilt. Queen. He said her name. He said it like I was supposed to know, like this was normal, like getting an $18,000 watch from another woman was just a quirky part of our marriage. "Who is Queen?" My own voice sounded alien, distant. Sean looked at me with genuine, unadulterated shock, as if I'd just asked him who the president was. "I told you about her. My paralegal." He paused, a cruel little smirk playing on his lips. "Well, more than that now. We got married 6 months ago. Small ceremony at the courthouse. I'm sure I mentioned it." The words floated in the air but refused to land. Married? 6 months ago? While we were still married? While I was sleeping next to him, making his coffee every morning with 2 sugars and a splash of cream? "We're married," I said, the word feeling stupid and foreign in my mouth. "Technically, yeah," he shrugged, like we were discussing an overdue library book. "The divorce papers got delayed, some filing error. But Queen understands me, Jane. She gets what I need. She owns the Morrison Gallery on Fifth Avenue. She appreciates success, ambition. She doesn't think a partnership is about homemade crafts and chicken marsala." And that's when Michelle walked in, wearing the designer jacket. Her timing was so perfect it felt staged. She glanced at the table, at the cooling food, at the vase sitting abandoned next to her father's plate, and she laughed. It wasn't a nervous little giggle. It was a genuine, full-throated laugh, bubbling up from a place of pure amusement. "Oh my God, Mom, you actually gave it to him?" She picked up the vase, turning it over in her hands like some bizarre artifact from a lost civilization. "This is so embarrassing. You can't compete with Dad's new wife. She owns an actual gallery. She knows what real art looks like." The betrayal from Sean was a dull, chronic ache I'd been nursing for years. But this casual cruelty from my own daughter, her easy dismissal of my work, my worth, that was a fresh, deep cut. Sean stood up abruptly. He grabbed the vase, my 3 months of work, my hope, my soul, and walked to the kitchen. I heard the clank of the foot pedal on our garbage can, and then the sickening, hollow thud of my art hitting the plastic liner full of coffee grounds and old takeout. The sound echoed through the silent apartment. It was the sound of my marriage ending. "I need something real in my life, Jane," he said, coming back to grab his coat. "Queen and I have a gallery opening tonight. Important collectors will be there, people who understand value." "I'm going too," Michelle announced, already heading for the door. "Queen promised she'd introduce me to real artists." They left together, father and daughter. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving me alone in the ruins of my life. I stood there frozen, staring at the garbage can. The silence in the apartment was deafening. Finally, a primal instinct took over. Not rage, not even sadness, but a cold, hard survival instinct. I walked to the sink, pulled on a pair of yellow rubber gloves, and approached the trash can like an archaeologist unearthing a priceless relic. There it was, my vase, sitting on top of last night's lo mein, a smear of orange sauce streaking its side like a wound. My hands shook as I lifted it out, cleaning it gently at the sink, dabbing away the indignity of the garbage. As I worked, my grandmother's voice echoed in my head. "The world only sees what you show them, honey," she used to say. "Show them garbage, they'll treat you like garbage. Show them gold and watch them scramble." He just threw her soul in the trash. If you have ever felt this dismissed, this invisible, and you're ready to see Jane rise from the ashes and get the ultimate revenge, you need to smash that subscribe button right now. Don't let her fight this alone. And if for some reason you're not subscribing, you have to ask yourself why. Are you okay with people being treated like this? Head down to the comments and tell me why you think this is acceptable. I sat at my kitchen table, the city lights bleeding through the window, and I opened my laptop. I didn't search for divorce lawyers. I searched for Denzel Washington Morrison Gallery. Article after article appeared. The 70-year-old art world titan, a legend who had discovered a dozen artists and turned them into millionaires. Every interview with him hit the same notes: authenticity over pedigree, emotion over technique, story over surface. In a New York Times piece, he'd said, "The best art comes from genuine pain transformed into beauty. I can spot a fake from a mile away, but true emotional resonance, that stops me in my tracks." I read until my eyes burned. By 3:00 a.m., I knew every exhibition he'd curated, every artist he'd launched. I knew his gallery hours, his assistant's name, and the name of the coffee shop on Madison Avenue where he supposedly reviewed submissions every morning. Sleep was a joke. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and practiced my pitch. The woman staring back at me was a ghost, hollow-eyed and pale. But there was something new in those eyes, a flicker of fire. The next morning, I called in sick to my part-time library job. The lie slipped out effortlessly. After 12 years of telling the truth to a man who had been lying the whole time, I guess I'd learned a thing or two. The subway ride from Queens to the Upper East Side felt like crossing an international border. I emerged at 77th Street, my worn coat and scuffed boots feeling like a giant neon sign that screamed, "I don't belong here." The Morrison Gallery was intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a security guard in a suit nicer than anything Sean owned. He clocked me the second I approached, his eyes sweeping over my worn-out tote bag. I lifted my chin and walked past him like I owned the place, and there he was, Denzel Washington. Standing in the center of the room, tall and impeccably dressed in all black, his silver hair catching the gallery lights. He was talking quietly on his phone about shipping logistics and insurance valuations. I waited, my heart pounding against my ribs, clutching the tote bag that held my vase, now rewrapped in my mother's best silk scarf. He ended his call and his eyes, sharp and intelligent, landed on me. He took in my coat, my bag, my nervous stance, and his expression wasn't one of pity or dismissal. It was curiosity. "Can I help you?" His voice was deep, carrying an authority that was softened by a genuine kindness. My practiced speeches evaporated. The raw, unvarnished truth just tumbled out. "My name is Jane. Last night, my husband threw my anniversary gift in the trash because it wasn't real enough for him. He's married to someone else now, another gallery owner who apparently knows what real art is. But I think what I made is something special. I remember you speaking at a symposium last year. You talked about finding authenticity in unexpected places." Denzel's eyebrow lifted just a fraction. "You were there. Third row, blue notebook." A tiny, incredulous smile touched my lips. "You said the best art comes from genuine emotion, not manufactured sentiment." A slow smile spread across his own face. "Show me." This is it, the moment of truth. She's about to show her trashed and rescued art to one of the most powerful men in the art world. Her hands are shaking. If you're feeling a little shaky yourself, too scared to hit that subscribe button, I get it. Fear can keep you from doing a lot of things. But for everyone else who has the courage to see a comeback story through to the end, hit that bell icon so you don't miss a thing. And if you're not, that's okay. Just drop a comment and let us know what's holding you back. I'm genuinely curious. My hands trembled as I unwrapped the silk scarf. I placed the vase on a nearby pedestal. Under the gallery's perfect professional lighting, the chrysanthemums exploded with life. Each petal seemed to catch and reflect the light, making the flowers appear to breathe, to live. Denzel circled the piece. Once, twice. He didn't speak. He didn't touch it. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. I could hear my own frantic heartbeat, the whisper of the gallery's climate-controlled air. My entire future was resting on this single, silent moment. Finally, he pulled out his phone, his eyes never leaving the vase. He dialed a number. "Marcus," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Clear the Fifth Avenue window display. We have something special." My legs gave out. I collapsed into an expensive leather chair in Denzel's office, the number he'd just quoted echoing in my head. $170,000 for something that had been sitting in my kitchen garbage can less than 12 hours ago. "I need you to understand what we're dealing with here, Jane," Denzel said, his voice gentle but serious. "This isn't just about the technical skill, although your glazing technique is genuinely revolutionary. The way you've layered the colors to create that depth, how the flowers seem to be simultaneously blooming and withering, that's museum quality work." Museum quality. The same words George had used. The same piece Sean had discarded like a used paper cup. "But what makes this truly valuable," Denzel continued, "is the story. A woman's artistic vision, literally discarded by a man who couldn't recognize mastery when it was sitting in his hands. The collectors who shop here, they don't just buy art. They buy a narrative. They buy vindication. Your vase, Jane, is all three." He turned his computer screen toward me. It showed a mock-up of the Fifth Avenue window display. My vase, sitting alone on a white pedestal, hit with dramatic spotlights. Below it, a simple gold placard with text that made my breath catch in my throat. "Chrysanthemums for the blind. A study in dismissed brilliance. Opening bid, $170,000. I signed the papers in a daze. Denzel handed me a business card, the gallery's logo embossed in gold. Underneath it, my name was already printed, Jane Brennan, featured artist. The subway ride home was surreal. I clutched the business card so tightly it left an imprint on my palm. By the time I got back to my apartment in Queens, my phone had begun its assault. A Facebook message from my cousin in Jersey with 14 exclamation points. "Is this your vase in the Morrison Gallery window?" Attached was a blurry photo. My vase, glowing under the lights, looking even more magnificent than the mock-up. Within an hour, my phone was unusable. Friends I hadn't spoken to in 15 years were suddenly my biggest fans. Distant relatives I barely knew were congratulating me. My old pottery teacher sent a picture of herself crying in front of the display, with a long message about how she'd always known I was special. Funny, since she'd spent 2 years telling me my technique was too unconventional. Then, Sean's name flashed on the screen. A text, then another, and another. "What kind of game are you playing, Jane? This is completely inappropriate. You need to take that down immediately. This affects my professional reputation. Answer your phone." 17 missed calls. I sat at my kitchen table, eating cereal straight from the box, watching my phone light up like a switchboard during a crisis. I screenshotted every single message, every missed call, a digital trophy case of his panic, and I didn't respond. $170,000. The world is finally seeing her worth. The question is, are you? Hitting that subscribe button is the fastest, easiest way to show that you believe in justice and second chances. If you choose not to, I have to wonder if you've ever really been in someone's corner when they needed it most. Let the comments section be a safe space for all the doubters to explain themselves. We're all listening. The story exploded on Instagram. A fashion influencer with 2 million followers posted a selfie in front of the window. The caption, "Her husband threw her art in the trash. Now it's worth $170K. Know your worth, Queens." The hashtags multiplied. #trash to treasure, #artistic justice, #queen energy. The story was already morphing. Some posts claimed Sean had burned my earlier work. Others said he'd laughed maniacally while throwing the vase away. The truth, that he had simply dismissed it, wasn't dramatic enough for the internet. Then the sharp, angry knock came at my door. I looked through the peephole. It was Sean, his face red and furious. And standing behind him was a woman in an impeccably tailored black dress and architectural glasses. It could only be her. Queen. I opened the door. Sean pushed past me without an invitation. "You need to stop this," he seethed. "Whatever sick game you're playing, it ends now." Queen followed him in, her heels clicking on my worn hardwood floors. She scanned my apartment, the mismatched furniture, the water stain on the ceiling, and her lip curled in a tiny, almost imperceptible sneer. "Mrs. Brennan," she said, her voice dripping with a fake, poisonous sweetness. "I'm Queen Morrison. I believe there's been a misunderstanding about your little craft project." Craft project. The words were designed to put me back in my place. This woman who had stolen my husband, who had bought my daughter's loyalty with designer clothes, was standing in my living room, trying to diminish me. "There's no misunderstanding," I said, my voice as cold and hard as steel. The piece is in Denzel Washington's gallery. The opening bid is $170,000, and 3 collectors have already submitted sealed bids above that. Sean's jaw tightened. Do you have any idea what this is doing to Queen's reputation? People are calling her gallery, asking if she's the woman who married the moron who can't recognize valuable art. They're questioning her eye for talent. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. Speaking of reputations, I said, pulling out my phone and showing them an email I'd received that morning. The Guggenheim would like to feature my vase in their upcoming exhibition on overlooked female artists. They're calling it a defining piece of contemporary ceramic art. Queen's perfectly made-up face went pale. That piece isn't worth that kind of money, she insisted, her voice losing its honeyed tone. This is just a spite-fueled publicity stunt. You're embarrassing yourself. Oh, here we go. The villains have arrived, trying to gaslight and manipulate Jane after they threw her away. This is the moment we've been waiting for. You know what to do. Subscribing right now is like standing shoulder to shoulder with Jane as she faces them down. Every single person who doesn't subscribe is basically telling the world they side with Sean and Queen. If that's you, I genuinely want to hear your reasoning. The comment section is all yours. Embarrassing myself? I repeated, a slow, genuine laugh building in my chest. I'm not the one who failed to recognize a 6-figure piece of art while claiming to be a gallery owner. I'm not the one who convinced a married man to abandon his family for someone who literally can't tell the difference between trash and treasure. That's when I saw her, Michelle, hovering in the hallway, looking small and uncertain. The designer jacket was gone. For the first time in months, she looked like my daughter again. Mom? Her voice was a whisper. Is it really worth that much? The current highest sealed bid is $210,000, I said, my voice steady. The auction is on Tuesday. Michelle's eyes darted between me and her father, the simple math clicking into place in her head. Her father had thrown away more money than most people earn in 5 years. This is what I'm talking about, Jane, Sean snapped, trying to use our daughter as a shield. You're humiliating our daughter with this circus. I'm succeeding publicly, Sean, I said calmly. You humiliated yourself privately when you decided that something made with love had no value. I just gave the world a chance to disagree with you. I looked down at his wrist, at the gleaming Rolex. That watch, I said, a sudden wicked idea striking me. The $18,000 gift from your new wife. Is it even real? Queen's face flushed a deep, telltale crimson. Sean's hand instinctively shot out to cover the watch. That's irrelevant, he stammered. Is it? I asked, a real smile spreading across my face for the first time in what felt like a decade. You threw away authentic museum-quality art for a fake watch. That seems entirely relevant to me. They left after that. Michelle lingered for a moment in the doorway, a look of dawning recognition in her eyes, the kind of look that sees things for what they really are, not what you wanted them to be. The auction was a blur. My mother flew in from Florida, her hand gripping mine as the bids climbed with dizzying speed. $180,000, $200,000, $220,000. Women came up to me during a break, crying, telling me my story had inspired them to leave their own dismissive husbands, to finally value their own work. The winning bid came from a Houston oil heiress famous for her collection of feminist art. $237,000. The hammer fell, and the room exploded in applause. The check cleared on a Thursday. By Friday, I was standing in the center of a sun-drenched 2,000-square-foot studio space in Brooklyn. My pottery wheel, once relegated to a corner of our cramped Queens apartment, now sat proudly in front of a wall of windows. Commission requests flooded my inbox. A tech exec in Silicon Valley wanted a series of bowls capturing the stages of grief. A luxury hotel chain in Miami wanted custom pieces. The subject line that made me laugh out loud read, "I need something beautiful that was born from garbage. Name your price." 3 weeks later, Michelle showed up at my studio. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by old jeans and a sweater I'd bought her years ago. Dad and Queen fight all the time now, she said quietly. She keeps telling him he has no eye for value. Last week, he took the Rolex to get serviced. It was a fake. A really good one, but fake. She looked at me, her eyes full of a regret so profound it made my own chest ache. "Can you teach me?" she whispered. "I want to learn how to make something real." We spent the next 6 months in that studio rebuilding our relationship over lumps of spinning clay. I taught her how to find the center, how everything depends on that single crucial step. My solo exhibition opened on a crisp autumn evening. The gallery was packed. At the center of it all, on loan from the Houston heiress and now insured for $500,000, was the chrysanthemum vase that started it all. Denzel gave the opening toast. 6 months ago, he announced, his voice ringing through the space, a woman walked into this gallery with a vase that had been thrown in the garbage by someone who could not recognize its value. Tonight, we celebrate the artist who proved that one person's trash is, sometimes, a masterpiece waiting for the right eyes to see it. The applause was like a physical wave of warmth. And that's when I saw him. Across the street, standing in the shadows, was Sean. He was watching me. His face held an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not frustration, but the deep, hollow understanding of a man who knows he has discarded something truly irreplaceable. Our eyes met through the glass. I gave him the smallest, slightest nod. Not of forgiveness, but of acknowledgement. Then I turned back to my life, to my daughter, who leaned in and whispered, "I'm proud to be your daughter," to the collectors buying my art, to the world I had built from the ashes of the one he had destroyed. By the end of the night, the exhibition had sold out, every single piece. I stood alone in the quiet gallery, surrounded by my work. A year ago, I was standing in my kitchen, my heart shattered by the sound of my art hitting the bottom of a garbage can. I now knew that the garbage can wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. It was a redirection. And the price tag, whether it's $237,000 or nothing at all, matters far less than the moment you finally, truly understand your own worth. Jane did it, from the trash can to a sold-out solo exhibition on Fifth Avenue. This is the kind of story that reminds you that justice, however slow, eventually arrives. If this story moved you, if it made you cheer, if it gave you hope, then subscribing is the only way to make sure you don't miss the next incredible story of triumph. Don't let the algorithm decide you don't need this kind of inspiration in your life. And for the handful of you who still haven't subscribed, the comment section is waiting. I want you to tell us, honestly, why you'd rather see a story like this fail. Your perspective is valuable.